Hello there, my name is Amy Lizette, and I'm one of the librarians here at CCS. And I'm here to talk to you today about determining if a source is reputable. How do you do that? Well, for starters, we're going to go to the library's website. So starting from Access Manager, which is idp.collegeforcreativestudies.edu, you can go to the library's website by clicking on the tab. It's a yellow box with a little black book outlined. And that will bring you to the library's website. So you may be familiar with this already, but the library has a lot of resources available to you. You can search for books or movies, magazines, as well in this search bar, as well as take a look at our databases. So the information that the library has pulled together, whether it's in these databases, which are subscription, which means that we pay in order to be able to access them, or it can also be open access, which means anybody's able to access them. The resources on this page have been pulled together by the CCS librarians and have been vetted by the CCS librarians. So if you find something from one of these databases, you should be good. Same goes for information that you find through the library's catalog. However, there's a lot of information that exists that is not pulled into the library's databases or our catalog. So what do? You use Google, of course you do. And we recommend that you use Google in conjunction with the library's resources. So let's go ahead and do a quick Google search for bioplastics. So I've run a Google search, and the first result, which is this pretty common, is Wikipedia. So clicking on bioplastic takes me to Wikipedia. Okay, so Wikipedia is often, professors often say, don't use Wikipedia as a source in your paper or your project, etc. And the reason for that is, although the information on Wikipedia is generally pretty good, although it can be edited by anybody, the community keeps a pretty close eye on edits, and often bad edits will be taken down pretty quickly. But the reason that you shouldn't use Wikipedia as a source is that Wikipedia is not providing any new information. They're simply pulling information from a variety of sources to create one summary of a topic. It can be a really in-depth summary, but that's all that it is. It's not new information. Okay, so the way that you can use Wikipedia in your papers is to go to the end of the article and take a look at the references. So you have a variety of references, and for this article on bioplastics, there are almost 100 for the record. And you can see that the sources vary greatly. Okay, so here's a source that's probably a popular source. You also have scholarly sources, right? So this one's from PubMed, and I'll get into what those terms mean in just a second. So you can absolutely take a look at the references on Wikipedia and go to those sources and read those and cite those in your projects. But coming back to Google itself, I want to take a look at a specific website. So I'm going to click on this link, which says The Truth About Bioplastics. And that will take me to a website. So how do you decide if this site is something that is reputable? So something that you would be okay using as a source for a paper or a project, and importantly, something your professor would be okay with you using. So first things first, you can look at the URL, and that will often give you a lot of information. So we lucked out with this one. It's columbia.edu. So there are two domains that are usually very reputable, and those are .edu and .gov. So occasionally you'll have something like maybe a student who posts a blog on a .edu site, in which case you would probably want to use their sources rather than their blog itself. But in general, the information that you're finding on .edu or .gov is going to be very reputable. But let's say that you don't have something so straightforward, right? It's .org or .com. Just because something is not .edu or .gov does not mean that it's not reputable. It just means that you need to dig a little bit more. So let's take a look at this article. We've got some information here, which is going to be really helpful, as well as the information in the header. So we know from the URL that it's Columbia, but if we look here, we can see that it's the Columbia Climate School. And if it was something that you didn't know the organization or whatever, you could click on that, find out more about the organization. That's a really good step to take. We don't need to do that here because we know what Columbia is. It's a very good university. Okay, so moving on, let's take a look at the date. So the date sometimes will not matter, but for things like technology or current events, it can matter quite a lot. So think about the difference between an article on Donald Trump's presidency written in 2017 versus 2020. They're going to be very different. And so sometimes it matters a lot that the information is current. The next thing to look at is who is the author. So here it's very helpfully linked, so we can just click on this individual's name. Okay, so right off the bat, she has a little bio, and you can see that she's a staff writer for Columbia Climate School. That's great. She's written over 180 articles. Clearly, she has expertise. Here's where she's been published, and she has a certificate in conservation and sustainability. Okay, so this is somebody who has a publishing record, right? They've written a lot and published a lot on the topic, as well as has an educational background that mean that she's very well qualified to talk about these subjects. So going back, there are just a couple of other things that I wanted to mention. So if we scroll down to the bottom, we can see where are her references. Oh, there are no references listed. But in this case, that's okay, because you can see that she has actually linked those throughout her text. So you want to make sure that the source that you're looking at cites its sources. Information does not exist in a vacuum. So you need to make sure that you can also reconstruct the research that has gone into this article. Okay, so being able to follow that research back through links, through references, through bibliography, all of those things are very important and mean that somebody else can replicate that research. So that's a really good sign here, which from Columbia, I'd expect no less. But a couple of other things to keep in mind. Is there a bias to the article? Is there a political stance that the author is taking that they're trying to get you to take? Something like that. Just because something has a bias doesn't mean that it is not reputable, that it's not worthwhile. It just means that you need to be aware of it, right? Something to keep an eye out for. And lastly, and this one's really easy, so I think you'll like this, sometimes just the look of the site can be a tip-off. Does it have a lot of pop-up ads? You know, is the grammar good? If there are issues with those things, that can often be a sign that maybe this source needs a closer look before you determine that it's something you should include in your project. Okay, so I walked you through several steps on how to evaluate if a source that you found via Google is a good one, okay? But say you're out in the wild and you can't remember these steps. What do? Well, the library has help. So if we come back to the library's website, and again, we reach this through Access Manager, you can see that there is a tab here at the top called Research Help, and I'm going to click on that. So this is a list of guides, and guides are a collection of information related to a topic. So that topic could be a specific subject, or it could be a department here at CCS, something like that. So I'm just going to look for information. Okay, and you can see that it has some results, and the first one is called Evaluating Information. So I'm going to click on that. So this guide has been put together by a CCS librarian and is available for you 24/7 to take a look at and use to help you evaluate information. So here it gives you some information about the guide itself, evaluating information, right? So there's something called the SIFT method: stop, investigate the source, find trusted coverage, trace clothes and media to the original source. So these are the things that we've talked about. Okay, keep in mind confirmation bias. This is particularly helpful if you're researching a hot button topic. Types of information. So when I was talking about Wikipedia, I mentioned that their references vary. You've got scholarly, you've got popular. So scholarly sources are absolutely reputable. No need to check, like those are good to go. But something can be a popular source and still very reputable. So just because it's not scholarly, don't dismiss it out of hand. So this page will walk you through the advantages and disadvantages to scholarly, trade, popular, and newspapers. different types of publications. So you can see why you might want to use one over the other, as well as some examples. So something like Artforum is not, it's not a scholarly source, but it's a really good source to use if you're writing about contemporary art. Lastly, this page also has information on primary, secondary, and tertiary, meaning 3 sources. So you can click on this, this chart if you're curious, but tertiary is an example. Wikipedia is an example of a tertiary source. So encyclopedias, something that is pulling information elsewhere and just summarizing it for you. Okay, and then lastly, there's information on how to evaluate images. Has this image been tampered with? Has it been altered, etc.? And this also provides help in tracking photos. So the reason that this is particularly relevant to you is that maybe you have a photo that you want to use in the project and you found it a couple of weeks ago and you downloaded it to your desktop. Problem is you didn't record the information about it. So you want to include that image in your project. What do? You have to find where you got that image. And so you can use Google image reverse image search, to put it in and kind of trace back where that came from. But that's kind of a pain. The easiest thing to do is to just record where that image came from the start. It'll make your life a lot easier. So I hope this was helpful. Please let me know if you have any questions or you'd like help. You can also schedule a meeting on the library's homepage. You can use Meet here to schedule a one-on-one reference appointment, or you can use our chat if you have a quick question. And you can see here, it will open up a chat window when you click on it.